Kristen Holmes reporting for us there. Kristen, thanks. And ABC-7 getting you more this morning.
Absolutely. PJ Scheiner, Southwest Florida attorney, joining us in studio this morning to talk about the parole hearing. PJ, always good to see you. Thanks for coming back.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're talking about these charges just a moment ago, kidnapping, theft, and assault with a deadly weapon. OJ sentenced 9 to 33 years in prison. Now, I want to add that people, I think, in my generation probably don't know OJ as a football star. We know him more as an individual with a pretty rough past here in the last 20 years or so. So when we're looking at these charges, do you think that his penalty fit this specific crime that he's charged with a few years ago?
Well, that's a tough question, right? Considering the nature of the charges, I think the court really, dug deep into all the circumstances. I think the court was not allowed to take into account in sentencing the fact that he had been accused of murder because he was ultimately acquitted at trial in the criminal process, okay? But as far as an opinion as to the sentence itself, that's a little bit above my pay grade. My job is to represent people, not to determine sentences in the criminal system. But with that being said, 9 years is a long time, but the charges were very serious. The sentence, though, was 9 to 33 years. So 9 years just means he's eligible for this parole process.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the parole board today, obviously they know his history as well. How do they go into this? And is there going to be somebody saying to them, of course, you can't take into account he was charged with murder in the past? How do you separate the two, or can you even do that?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, it starts with a point scoring system. So the parole board has 11 factors that they score on a -1 to +2 basis. And they actually have tiers. If you're below a 6, then you're a low risk candidate for parole. In other words, you have a better chance of being granted parole. 6, and I think the next tier is 11 is medium, and then 11 above is high, which would be unlikely to receive parole. OJ actually went through this process twice before, in 2013 and 2014. Because there were a number of different convictions, there were actually different sentences associated with each crime and conviction. So in 2013 and 2014, I believe his score was a 3, which is in that low category, which would make him more likely to be eligible for parole. The difficult question is, though, does the parole board consider the fact that there's a lot of feelings associated with the murder charges that he was ultimately criminally acquitted of. However, civilly, he was found to be liable for the murders. And there is a provision that the parole board can consider in terms of evaluating the threat that an individual poses to society. If an individual is released, their likelihood to reintegrate without, presenting a criminal threat to society. So theoretically, the parole board could consider evidence from the civil trial in terms of evaluating his propensity to commit a crime if he is released. But everything that I've read, and I'm a lawyer here in Southwest Florida, not out in Nevada, I'm not intimately involved in this case, but everything that I've read indicates that he's more likely to receive parole based on the low scoring that he received in his prior appearances before the parole committee or the parole board out in Nevada.
So now that we're at the 9-year mark, if he's denied parole today, will he have an opportunity for that again in the future? He
will, yeah. So if I believe there's a 6-person board, it's actually 7, but there's a seat that's unfilled right now. And so if the board ties at 3-3, then he would be eligible to be reevaluated in 6 months. Okay. But if he's denied this time, his likelihood of getting it next time might not be so great. He might have to serve a few more years before the board reconsiders their evaluation, because it would be based on the point scoring system and the record that exists in terms of his point score of 3 at the prior appearances in 2013, 2014. The board would have to believe that he presents a threat to society. In other words, that he's a likely criminal risk upon release for them to not grant parole at this time, which would, inform the decisions at later appearances as well.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. PJ Scheiner, thank you so much for your input there. And of course, everyone will be watching this today. It airs today at 1 o'clock. Coverage starts then on ABC-7.
Going to be live streaming too.
Yeah.
That's how big this is.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Anytime. Always good to talk with you.